Coronavirus, 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 coronavirus. Great. Now that I have your attention, we can get started. I am going to present the facts and data surrounding COVID-19 transmission and the mechanism through which it works in a way that I haven't seen often before, with minimal jargon and with the pig feces related content that I know everyone craves. Let's get into it. Now, before we get to the science of it, I just want to make it known that this entire global pandemic really, when you get right down to it, falls on the shoulders of one Eric Matthews, a quote-unquote manager at Denny's. You see, he kicked me out of a fine Denny's establishment at one point when I brought along a little baggie of pig feces to enjoy along with my meal. He all but forced me to throw the feces at him. I got prison time, and as a result, had to stop my pig feces tasting Twitch channel for months in which I definitely would have discovered and been infected by coronavirus, giving us a huge head start on this pandemic. I would have been isolated and alone when I shit myself to death, and therefore my body could have been used to perfect a vaccine for the virus, making me a martyr for all of humanity. And really, when it comes right down to it, Eric ruined it. He ruined everything. Okay, my lawyer says I'm not supposed to talk about this, right? So I should move on. The point is that coronavirus has been around for quite a while, since around the 1920s. It's existed in the form of a virus which has affected chickens' urogenital tract, and in 4 variants that almost exclusively impact pigs' fecal matter. It is transmitted to new pigs via shit, which pigs then eat and absorb the virions, which then infect their intestinal tract and causes their shit to become infectious. It's a very vicious shit-related cycle. So, you might be asking yourself right now, why, oh why, would a merciful and loving God make the deadliest disease of the last century at least be the pig poop disease? Well, there's a decent reason for that. There's reason to believe that technically coronavirus came from bats, because bats do not have the same sort of inflammatory responses that mammals like humans or pigs do. As we'll get into later, these inflammatory responses, though designed to protect us, can often have some very dire consequences when it comes to viruses. They can actually hurt us quite a lot. So the fact that the bats don't have these immune responses actually make them more able to carry a disease without actually being killed by it. This makes them a great reservoir for diseases that will then become very, very deadly if they leap to any other type of animal. Thing is, though, the current version of coronavirus that is paralyzing all of humanity is not actually that similar to the bat version, or at least not similar enough for there not to be an intermediate host, a host that it incubated in and adapted to before then jumping and attaching to human cells. There's a missing link here. We'll get into that later. So, a disease that really doesn't harm a bat very much might cause a lot of trouble in humans who do have immune responses, like inflammation. Inflammation can cause something called a cytokine storm in human beings, which is typically the actual cause of death for patients infected with COVID-19. And in the case of pigs, it's what causes them to deathficate. Many of these viruses work is they target a specific protein on the outside of the cell. If that protein isn't there, then that cell simply can't be targeted by the virus. It has nowhere to enter the cell. But when the spike of a virus and the transmembrane protein of a cell love each other very much, sometimes they can connect. As a result of this sizzling chemistry, the virus can sometimes manipulate the cell into letting it inside. Right, what was I saying? Right. The point of all this is that the virus often requires a very specific protein on the outside of a cell before it can become infected. That's what I meant. that's part of how viruses target specific tissues or species, because not all tissues within an animal express the same proteins on the outsides of their cells. So for example, in humans, the protein ACE2 is only really expressed in the heart, in the spine, in the kidneys, and in the lungs, which is what's relevant here. It also happens to be tied to the vasodilation and vasoconstriction system, which is where your blood vessels either get wider or thinner. It essentially controls the amount of blood that has access to a tissue. COVID-19 attaches to ACE2 in humans and pigs and uses that to get inside of cells. Now, what you might not know is that the vasodilation and vasoconstriction system, the widening and constricting of blood cells, is also tied to the human inflammatory response. It's basically, when you get a bruise, or your cheeks are flushed, or when you get a cut and it starts to turn red, that's the inflammation system at work. Sadly, though, sometimes that inflammation system can go absolutely AWOL and destroy your own body, killing you. You see, a good metaphor for thinking about the leukocytes, the macrophages that help protect your body through the immune system, is that they're basically like cops. Their real purpose is to kill anyone that looks foreign. Also like cops, if left unchecked, certain processes with these leukocytes or macrophages can lead to the total destruction of the system they are meant to protect. To future prosecutors looking to use this as evidence, know that I don't hate all cops. It's just that I've just survived 2020, so... Anyway, when the disease is in a human body and not systemic, it's called a cytokine storm, which is an appropriately ominous-sounding name for something that has killed quite a lot of people in the last year. Just like cops. What causes cytokine storms is the leukocytes, the white blood cells that are attacking an infection, release cytokines, which are these small signaling molecules. These cytokines then, in turn, activate more white blood cells, which come in and release more cytokines in this sort of feedback loop. When this gets out of control, it can cause vasodilation, and blood flows into tissues it's not supposed to, like, say, in the case of COVID, the lungs. It's lethal. It kills people. And it's really not okay. Just like cops. Maybe I've been going about this video wrong. I wanted it to be filled with poop and pig and cop jokes. Although I know that's redundant. Maybe it all comes back to that fateful meal at Denny's with that goddamn prick Eric. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't regret throwing feces at him. It was totally warranted. He was being a total anti-freedom authoritarian hate monger. But look at the plate of food I was eating. Bacon. I caused this. I'm not just the reason why you're no longer allowed to bring closed or opaque Ziploc bags to Denny's anymore. I caused this by buying bacon, eating pork, supporting the farming of pigs. If it's true that the bad version of human coronavirus is not genetically similar enough to be immediately transmissible to humans, there has to be a second host. And the second host is probably livestock, which we breed to absurd numbers and live in close contact with. If our lust for salty, oily bacon is a sin, then COVID and the searing, red-hot rush of blood that is inflammation are the red-hot flames of hell coming for us. We are all sinners, and it is Judgment Day. So now might be your last chance to smash that subscribe button.